Today, we are digging into something that could change everything we think about education. It all comes from the mind of mathematics professor Po-Shen Loh. He's the coach for the US Math Olympiad team, and he stumbled onto a discovery about AI that, well, it completely flipped his thinking on what it even means to be smart anymore. All right, let's get into it. I mean, really think about that. An exam that's designed to be this pinnacle of human intellect, and a machine just waltzes in and aces it. This isn't science fiction anymore. And it's the exact moment that kicked off this entire story. And that was Professor Law's gut reaction. See, he was on a committee reviewing scholarship applications for a university. So, on a whim, he decides to test out this new thing called ChatGPT. He asked it to write a really high-stakes scholarship essay, and in seconds, it spit out a perfect one. I mean, the kind of essay that could literally win someone a life-changing scholarship. And that's when he knew, oh boy, the game has changed. So let's start right there with that initial shockwave. The moment it became crystal clear just how powerful AI was going to be in the world of education. And you got to understand, this isn't just any professor. This is a guy who coaches the absolute brightest young minds in the entire country. He lives in this high-pressure world of elite universities. So when he saw that one of the core ways we evaluate people, the personal essay, could now be perfectly automated, it hit him hard. Now, if you're thinking, okay, that's interesting, but it's all kind of theoretical, well, get ready for this. Professor Loh shared this wild story about a student who was already light years ahead, using AI to basically hack the gig economy. Here's the playbook. It's this brilliant and maybe slightly devious four-step method. First, he just told ChatGPT to act like an expert tutor. Simple enough. Then, he'd take live questions from students on a tutoring website and just feed them to the AI. Step 3, for quality control, he'd actually ask ChatGPT to double-check its own work. And then the final touch, to cover his tracks, he would manually retype the answer so it looked human. So simple, so elegant, and kind of terrifying. And get this, it perfectly shows you the insane efficiency we're talking about now. In under 10 minutes, the student made $600 before the website figured out what was happening and shut him down. He didn't break a single law, he just used a new tool way more cleverly than anybody else. This is the new reality. But just when it seems like AI is this unbeatable force, Professor Loh noticed something. A little chink in the armor. A blind spot that, it turns out, reveals exactly what makes us humans still so valuable. He was looking at OpenAI's own official data, and the results are they're staggering. GPT-4 scored in the 90th percentile on the bar exam, the test to become a lawyer, 90th percentile in AP Art History. And look at this, the 99th percentile on the GRE verbal test. It is, by all metrics, smarter than almost every single human on tests that measure what we already know. But then, he saw something else. Here's where it all gets so interesting. While it's hitting the 99th percentile on the GRE, its score on the American Mathematics competition, the AMC-12, plummets to the 60th percentile. That's not just a drop, that's a cliff. So what on earth is going on? Why is this one test so hard for this super genius AI? And here is the answer. The AMC isn't your typical math test. It's not about remembering formulas you learned in a textbook. It's famous for throwing problems at you that you have never, ever seen before. To solve them, you have to be genuinely creative. You have to invent a solution. It's not about what you know, it's about what you can figure out. And that's the blind spot. Boom. AI is a master synthesizer. Think of it like the world's greatest remix artist. It can take all of human knowledge that's on the internet and rearrange it, remix it flawlessly. But it cannot create a truly new solution to a problem it's never encountered. That, Professor Loh realized, is where we humans still hold the winning hand. So, armed with this huge insight, Professor Loh started building a whole new framework for education, a blueprint, really, for the skills that will actually matter in a world with AI. He says we need to pivot our focus to these 3 core human skills. These are the things that AI just can't do, or at least does really, really poorly. So let's break them down. Okay, first up, novel problem solving. This is basically that AMC math skill, but for everything in life. It's the ability to look at a brand new challenge, one with no instruction manual, and just invent a way forward. This is the engine of science, of entrepreneurship, of all human progress, really. The second skill is something that a machine might never, ever truly get: deep humanity. We're talking about real empathy, real connection, love, understanding why people do what they do. This isn't just data to be processed. It's the entire fabric of our lives, and it's absolutely crucial for leading people, for working in teams, for building anything worthwhile. And the third pillar is masterful communication. Because look, you can have the most brilliant, world-changing idea, but if you can't explain it to other people, if you can't get them excited about it, it's useless. It just stays in your head. Professor Loh, who calls himself a nerd, said learning this one skill was one of the best investments he ever made in his own life. And hey, don't just take his word for it. The legendary investor Warren Buffett famously said that getting better at communication is the single fastest way to increase your own value by 50%. It's the bridge that connects a great idea to the real world. So what happens when you take these three skills, novel problem solving, deep humanity, and masterful communication, and you combine them in one person? Well, you get something incredibly powerful, maybe a little bit dangerous. That is a direct quote. A city mayor said that to Professor Loh after meeting the students in his program. And he meant it as a compliment. He meant that these kids were dangerously effective. They could come up with these brilliant, novel ideas and then turn around and persuade anyone, investors, politicians, you name it, to help make them a reality. So how does he do it? His method is genius. He takes these kids who are already brilliant at math and logic, all the left brain stuff, and then he brings in comedians and actors to teach them the right brain stuff: performance, timing, storytelling, connecting with an audience on an emotional level. You end up with someone who can both invent the future and inspire everyone to help build it. And this might be the most important piece of the puzzle. Professor Loh knows that this combination of analytical genius and charismatic persuasion is a superpower. And because it's so powerful, he's incredibly careful. He only accepts students into his free program that he truly believes are good people who will use that superpower for good. You know, when you boil it all down, Professor Loh's journey leads us to this one fundamental question. Are we going to keep teaching our kids to compete with AI at a game of memorization, a game we're destined to lose? Or are we going to pivot and focus on teaching them the very skills that make them irreplaceable, the things that make them deeply human: creativity, empathy, and connection? I think the answer to that question is going to define everything for the next generation.